Sup Punions, Chris Punking here, and welcome to D&Design, the show where I look at D&D class design and roast it, or praise it, depending on my own biased opinions. I know, my timing is immaculate, given that we will be getting a new player's handbook this year, but all this means is that there will be a second season where I can see the progress the designers have made and the changes they implemented. Stay tuned for that. I just googled the release date of the 2024 Player's Handbook and it appears to be September 17th. I think I can get through all the classes by then, if I hurry. So let's get going, there's no time to lose. Starting alphabetically with the Artificer. I am a lucky boy, since it is the only core class that will not be reworked in the 2024 Player's Handbook. So this video will live forever. The Artificer is also the newest class, only officially introduced in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. It is a class of inventors that create magic items, thereby tapping into a type of fantasy not present in the game prior, at least not for player characters, which is good. Many people love the Artificer. I am not one of these people. In fact, the Artificer is so unappealing to me that I never actually played it. So why must I be the pumpkin man ripping this class a new one if I've never played the goddamn class? Well, it's because I can read and decide that what is on the page is ass. If my reasoning in this video is flawed, please correct me. But do not go around claiming that I need to play every class to be able to tell if it sucks. Everyone agrees that the Berserker Barbarian is terrible, and no one plays it for that reason. So, to start my criticism, I think the Artificer is not only rather weak, but is also incredibly unsatisfying in terms of its mechanics. As I go through the levels, I will look at this class's features and try to distinguish my critiques along these two lines as they come up. So, let's begin. Level 1. D8 hit die, medium armor, intelligence and con save proficiencies, blah 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 blah. Magical tinkering and spellcasting. Magical tinkering is a cantrip, but useless. Seriously, it reads like prestidigitation, thaumaturgy, druidcraft, except that it's the worst one of the three, and it's not like these are super powerhouse must-have cantrips to begin with. I'd rather this were a cantrip, that way I could simply not pick it during character creation. Let me get my tinfoil hat and reveal that I have a theory as to why this is not a cantrip, but first, let me talk about the Artificer's other first-level feature, spellcasting. Despite being a half-caster, the Artificer begins with the same spell slots as a full caster. Coupled with the D8 hit die and their medium armor proficiency, they're comparable to druids at this level. They both even have a useless ribbon feature. Druidic. The Artificer spell list is fine. I would not call it weak, but I will call it boring. For some ungodly reason, there is not a single Artificer-only spell. So, at this level, the Artificer does nothing unique. Anything the Artificer can do, another class can do as well. Except for magical tinkering. Which brings me back to my conspiracy as to why it's not a cantrip. Someone on the design team liked magical tinkering so much that they needed to have it on this Artificer. But they didn't want to come up with more Artificer-exclusive spells. But imagine if the only Artificer-exclusive spell was this useless piece of garbage. The designers would never hear the end of it, so they couldn't make it a spell, and instead turned it into a level 1 feature. So, to summarize level 1, power-wise, the Artificer is fine. But unfortunately, it has nothing unique to offer at this point. This will change though, as we get to level 2. This is the big one. Infusions. The Druid comparison is still apt at this point, with the Druid gaining their central feature Wild Shape at this level 2. So what do Artificers get? Well, they get to make magic items. Sorry, infuse magic items. I hate this. Again, in terms of power, I think this is fine. Not strong, but fine. A +1 magic weapon is kinda like a fighting style, which Rangers and Paladins, the other two half-casters in the game, get at second level as well. And you even get 2 magic items. This design here does create some balance issues with the class. Since you can give the items to someone else or keep them to yourself, the Artificer is stuck in this weird space where the designers can't really know which option you will choose. If the Artificer was as strong as, let's say, the Fighter, and also gained magic items on top, they would outshine the Fighter. So the Artificer must be kept weaker than the other classes. But now you have created a situation where the Artificer must keep his magic items to himself to keep up. Impossible to balance. But that is fine. D&D is a team game, and not every class must be perfectly balanced against each other. But it still feels kind of bad knowing that the +1 weapon that you infused, would be more useful to the party in the hands of the Fighter because he just does more with it. But it is the flavor of this feature that I despise the most here. Because for a class that promises you to play a magic item creator/inventor, this feature, in my opinion, does not deliver at all on this. The magic items you usually find in your D&D game were not made by artificers, because they don't make magic items, they just infuse them. If they lose their infused item, they can just infuse the new one, and the old one becomes mundane again. And if the artificer dies, the item becomes mundane again after a couple of days as well. So if the artificers are the only people making magic items, then there would be no magic items lying around for adventurers to find. And if there are other people out there making those cooler types of magic items, then I would honestly much rather play a class based on them, because they're clearly better at it. Because the artificer makes swords that don't stay magical, apparently. Listen, I understand the design intent here. By doing it this way, you avoid a couple of pitfalls. If artificers could just create new magic items all the time, with the only constraint being money and time, then they would potentially become broken because infinite magic items, right? So magic items cannot be infinitely created. Okay. But what if an artificer is only able to create one magic item that stays magical forever and is used as a focus for most of your artificer abilities? Then the artificer would be crippled if they ever lost that item. So you avoid those problems by simply making it lame. Wait, who's that?
Hi, it is me, the wizard. I have this cool spellbook, and if I lose it, I cry, but I can also gain access to new spells and become more powerful. All I need is time and money to copy spells into my spellbook. Did you know I can make an infinite amount of spell scrolls with downtime? It's completely rules as written.
Yeah, remember our pitfalls? The wizard works exactly like this. And while you can argue that it does not work for the wizard and the designers try to address it here, I have never had a wizard break my game. And as a GM, you can absolutely influence this by restricting the amount of time and money the party has, and by not being an ass and taking away a wizard's spellbook. Like, come on. Furthermore, this feature also is not a good representation of the core class fantasy of the Artificer for me. In my mind, the Artificer is a clever inventor who prepares meticulously, but can also think quick and adapt on the fly, and make adjustments to their inventions in situations if they require it. Infusions are prepared at the start of the day, and you cannot change them, so there's no adaptability. And in terms of preparing and planning, like 4 infusions and have 2 active at the same time, but not the same one twice, and also not 2 on the same item. Thanks, I'm really feeling well prepared for any situation. I just have so many options. So what I'm left with is a class that does not deliver on the fantasy that I want out of it. And I realize that this is subjective. Maybe infusions are exactly what you want them to be. But for me, at least, the Artificer just feels incredibly half-baked. The main feature does not work for me on any level. Do you know what does work? Flash of genius. I love this feature. It's such a perfect representation of the quick-wittedness that this inventor class is supposed to bring to the table. I absolutely love it. But by level 7, it comes a little too late for my liking, and especially because the rest of the class doesn't excite me all that much, it is sadly not enough to salvage it for me. I skipped a bit here, let's go back and talk about the subclasses now. I actually really like them thematically. The first thing I like in terms of Artificer flavor being represented by mechanics. You can build a robot companion, an Iron Man armor, a gun, or you can brew unstable potions. All of these are super flavorful and evocative, and some of them are even somewhat powerful. While I do have some complaints about the power level of the Alchemist, this is not the moment to voice them. First, I want to talk about level 5. Level 5 is where D&D classes hit a major power spike. This is where tier 1 of play becomes tier 2. Proficiency bonus goes up. Marshals gain extra attack. Spellcasters get access to level 3 spells. There are 2 classes that break this rule. One of them is the Rogue, which is part of the reason why that class becomes really bad by level 5 and beyond. And the other is, you guessed it, the Artificer. That has to make do with a subclass feature. These subclass features need to be comparable to extra attack or 3rd level spells, and that's a tall order. But this is also an opportunity. As I said, the subclass features are the one thing that I find mechanically and flavorful interesting about the Artificer. So giving them a major buff at level 5 could really make this class, okay, they get minor damage buff to spells or extra attack. Riveting. This, to me, is the final nail in the coffin of the Artificer. Because at this point, the Artificer ceases to be just uninteresting, but it also becomes weak. You are either a paladin, but without fighting style, only a d8 hit die, and no other martial features to speak of, and that's the better case. The alternative makes you a spellcaster with terrible spell slot progression, no unique spells, and nothing else going for you. At higher levels, you gain some neat abilities, and I really like the level 20 Artificer Capstone. It's unique, flavorful, and quite powerful. But as anyone knows who plays this game, the high levels are barely reached, and so the features there are barely worth considering, so this is where I'll stop. The final thing I want to do is ask one simple question. Why is this class so beloved? And I believe the answer is flavor. People just love describing the Iron Man suit up as their arcane armor forms around their body. They love cogs turning, contraptions activating, lasers being fired from eldritch cannons. And I get it. It's awesome to describe this in a setting that normally features guy with sword and guy with axe. The same reason that magic is special. But D&D has magic basically in every class. So the next and new special thing is technology. Now here's the thing. Flavor is free. I can play a wizard and flavor my spells to be contraptions and inventions instead. My spellbook can be an artificial intelligence data storing device from which I download spells directly into my pumpkin brain. I can flavor all of my spells as inventions and gadgets, and I guarantee you that I will feel more like a smart inventor than if I would play an artificer. So in short, I am hoping for a redesign of the Artificer at some point. A design that gives me a class that feels like a clever inventor and tinkerer that the Artificer should be, in my opinion. Because I like the Artificer, and I would love to play one, but right now, I cannot see myself enjoying this class.